You have to make him co-host to present, right?
Yep. So if you don't make me host, but if you make me co-host, then you are still in charge.
Oh. 1 minute. I'm very poor in this. Yes, done. Yeah.
Perfect.
Warm greetings to all anthropology fraternity across the world. And this evening is a very most important evening for us here in India, because today we have a distinguished speaker, Walter Faaij from Netherlands, to address the topic on um, Anthropologists Wanted, why organizations need anthropology. This is a very important topic, so we are so excited to hear from him. And now I request all the participants to mute your mics and kindly, so that the entire presentation will go smoothly. And thank you for muting. And I request our Honorable President of Anthropological Association for Humankind to introduce our speaker to the audience. Professor V. Narayan Reddy garu. Oh, I think he... Professor V. Narayan Reddy garu.
I think his connection is disconnected.
Oh, okay. He said he will be available only for a few minutes because he has a press meeting also. I think, yeah, okay. Then, yeah. So I take this privilege to introduce our distinguished speaker, Walter Faaij. He was born in Holland, and he was born in 1984. Walter Faaij is a corporate anthropologist, sustainability consultant, and a keynote speaker. Walter founded Green Culture Lab in 2010, and is an expert on sustainability, corporate culture, and culture change. Walter helps companies and organizations to anchor sustainability in their DNA and corporate culture. Because change is not only about technology and the business case, but much more about people. Sustainability requires collective mind shift, new behavior, and a culture change. Walter is associated consultant and experienced keynote speaker, characterized by being anthropological exotic and corporate pragmatic, curious to the bone, still hasn't figured out why people do what they do, loves to visit exotic places like Greenland, Spitsbergen, or Mongolia. Yeah, facts and figures. Walter graduated in 2010, cultural anthropology at Utrecht University, founded his company in May 2010 as a sustainable consultant, rebranded the company in 2018 into Green Culture Lab. He is associate partner of Human Dimensions. Over the past 10 years, consulted 100 plus clients, gave 50 plus keynotes on sustainability, corporate culture, and leadership, facilitated 50 plus dialogues about sustainability, inclusion, or conflict, conducted 9 large-scale culture assessments, guided 8 large-scale culture change programs. More info about Walter. greenculturelab.com or www.humandimensions.com. Green Culture Lab was founded in 2010 to build a sustainable, inclusive, and future-proof world. Through this Green Culture Lab, Walter helped leaders who want or need to embed sustainability in their organizations. The obstacles you meet often have to do with people and culture. He believed the transition into the world is much more about culture than anything else or technology. We need to shift our mindset from an extractive to the regenerative and inclusive one. We have to develop new behavior, and we find ourselves in the midst of a profound culture change. So we strive to live an organization with sustainability in its DNA. Happy customers and engaged employees who carry sustainability in their hearts, minds, and daily actions. So with this brief introduction to our distinguished speaker, Walter Faaij, I now request him to deliver his lecture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for this nice introduction and for having me, for inviting me over to this webinar and to connect with you and to share my story about, well, about how I am an anthropologist, how anthropology in Holland looks like, and I think about the power of anthropology and the need for anthropology as well. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to give you a lecture of somewhere around 45 minutes, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, depends. So let's just do that. I will share my screen. I will share the slides afterwards in PDF format. So I'll send it over to you, Dr. Pedrataya. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. And of course, this is recorded as well. So yeah. And before that, before I start sharing my slides, I will just tell you a little bit more about me, because you, of course, the formal story you just heard, but I'm also just a human being, a person. So I'm Walter. I live in Holland, in Utrecht, which is one of the major cities. It's the 4th city, but you will laugh when you hear how many people live here. It's about 400,000 people. And that makes it the 4th largest city in Holland. I recently became a father, so I have a child of 15 months old now, and it still feels like the day like yesterday he was born, and at the same time there's like been years past. So I think fatherhood is an interesting experience, very much. And I'm an anthropologist, and I graduated in 2010. But before I did that, I went to Greenland. I lived there for 3 months, and I saw the impact, the social impact of climate change on people's everyday lives. And as a scientist, I was fascinated, but as a human being, as a person, I was shocked by what I saw, what I heard, what I experienced myself. And I came back home in Holland. I wrote my thesis, I graduated, and I felt that there was something really going in the wrong direction in the world. So not only in Greenland, but in many places. So also in India, also in the Maldives, also in every place in the world has to do with climate change. And the solutions I saw, they were very technological, very economic or business case driven, and I felt like I had something to do as an anthropologist. But I found it hard to figure out what I had to do, what my place in this field was. So I took out on this journey. I started my own firm. At that time, when I founded it, it was called Sustainable Consultant. By now, it's rebranded into Green Culture Lab, helping organizations, clients, people within organizations, leaders, green rebels, I like to call them, to embed sustainability into the core of who the organization is, into the DNA, into the corporate culture. As an anthropologist, because I think it's more about culture and people than about anything else. So that's like the brief introduction. I will walk you through my ideas, because I think sustainability is one of the major topics we are facing as humanity right now. But first and foremost, I am an anthropologist, and I want to talk with you about anthropology. I wrote a book about it with 2 other people who are not here today. But today we're talking about anthropology. But I thought it's nice to give you something of my background and my convictions and who I am. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat. I will keep my eye a little bit on the chat. I can't promise I will answer everything, but I will. If I see a question, I can just answer. I'll pick it up, and otherwise there's time for questioning afterwards as well. So don't worry. But if you have a question during my story, please put them in the chat, and I'll pick them up if I can, because I like some kind of interaction. Even though it's digital and online, and I'm talking to a couple of faces or just names, I like the interaction. I like to feel that there's people on the other side of the screen, because I'm an anthropologist after all, right? All right, I'll start sharing my screen now, and let's go on this ride.
Dear Walter, sir, you can first finish your presentation. After that, we can have a question hour.
Yeah, perfect.
Instead of a disturb, means we want to have full presentation.
Yeah.
Finished. After that, we can. I request our members to pose questions one after one.
All right, perfect. Let's do it that way. I'm trying to share my screen.
Yeah, it is visible now.
Is it visible? Okay, perfect. Then I'll put your faces back on my screen as well. Right.
I forgot to introduce that the Walter sir is the co-author of this book, Why Organizations Need Anthropology.
That's all right.
Yeah. So you have very. I'm sorry, sir.
Don't worry, don't worry. I'll just talk about it. Don't worry. So thank you for having me. And the book we wrote, the title is out there, Anthropologists Wanted, and the subtitle is Why Organizations Need Anthropology. And I have it right here. I'm proud of it. We're proud of it. And it's not just marketing, but we really strongly believe that anthropology is needed in society and is needed in organizations and needed in companies, because if you look through the anthropological lens, you will find better answers. And let me walk you through this story and explain why I believe that. Well, this is just, if you want to read, you can read something about me, where I came from, all that stuff. But we wrote this book, Anthropologists Wanted, because we felt something was missing when we graduated ourselves, basically. So we wrote a book that we would have loved to read after we graduated ourselves. So how to translate your skills, your perspectives, your knowledge to the world outside of academia, into the field, into the realm of organizations, companies, into the professional field. So what is anthropology? What skills do you have? Where do anthropologists work? And what value do you bring to a workplace, to an organization, to leaders? And moreover, how can we tell better stories so other people understand and feel the value of the things that we have to offer? So we wrote this book a couple of years ago, and it was translated last May, or the translation was published last May. So that's really nice. And I believe that anthropologists are important because when we look at the world, when I look at Holland, of course, I don't know the context in India that well. But when I look at the world and when I look at the circumstances in Holland, I think we need new answers because the old answers don't work anymore. So our old beliefs about how to relate to climate and the fact that we are facing severe climate change, the old answers, they don't work anymore. The healthcare system in Holland is really under threat of being overtaxed in terms of too many people coming in, too little people working in it, too expensive. So this doesn't work anymore either. Look at migration and mobility in the world. Look at climate refugees. Look at what's happening in war zones. Look at, for example, what's happening in Afghanistan right now. Our economic systems, they are the old answers that our economic systems and our societies are based on, they don't work anymore either. So I think we collectively as society in Holland, but I think globally, we need to find new answers because the old answers, they don't work anymore. And I think anthropologists are perfectly positioned to help find those new answers, or at least ask the right questions to help finding new answers. Because in the end, look at technology and digitalization, for example, as well. So they are major developments in the world, and they demand new answers. They demand that we find new answers that are more equal, just, inclusive, sustainable, because we are running into walls in all of these themes. And this is not like a list that is complete, but just to name a couple of major themes that we're facing in the world. And I think anthropologists are positioned perfectly well because in the end, this is what it is about. It's about people who are giving meaning. It's about people who are shaping culture. It's about people who are going through change or who need to change or don't want to change. So in the end, it's all about these things, which are kind of hard to measure quantitatively with numbers, with statistics, with percentages, but they're super qualitative. So a song can mean something totally different for you than it can mean for me. Having a child means something totally different for you than it can for me. So how we collectively attach meaning and how our behavior follows from that, that's what anthropology is all about, I believe. So it's about meaning and about culture and about change as well. So that's why anthropologists and anthropology as a discipline should reclaim this field and these themes and these topics and the seat at the table where it's about these themes, I think, as well. So you could say, let's dive into culture a little bit deeper, because this often is well, mind-blowing might be too strong, but this is an insight in many organizations and companies that I work. So what I do is I guide organizations to understand better why they have the culture that they have, why people inside that organization behave like they do, in order to help them embed sustainability and inclusion in the DNA, in the core, in the culture of their organization. And how I do that is as an anthropologist. But the funny thing is that I don't need to use very sophisticated anthropological concepts to help them understand. But it's quite basic anthropology. So people, a lot of people, the field of culture is left to management authors, to management researchers, to economists, to psychologists. But I think it's time for anthropologists to reclaim their seat at the table. So that's why I think it's really helpful to have lines like these that help other people understand what we bring, how we look, and how culture works. So I think people shape culture, but also culture shapes people. So it works two ways. And if you look at the two most important drivers of culture, you could say, we'll get to that in the next slide, but let's just stick with this one. People shape culture and culture shapes people. So this means that we all, in every single moment of the day we are interacting with other people, or maybe not even interacting, we have the decision to confirm the existing order or to challenge the existing order. So for many people in organizations I work with, this is like a revelation. It's mind-blowing. It's a new idea, a new concept about the agency that they have to confirm or to alter the way they are cooperating in their organization. And you could say culture is solidified meaning. So it's about convictions that turn into values, principles, behavioral norms, policy and processes, and into the physical world. So the image that you see right here is a hotel in Amsterdam in Holland, which is called Hotel Jakarta. And it's basically built of wood. Only the foundations are built of concrete. And then of course you see a lot of glass inside, but then it's built of wood because of the underlying belief that building with concrete, building with a lot of steel is not very sustainable, is not a way to move into the future. So the belief is that we need to redesign and rebuild our built environment, our cities, our hotels, our buildings, our everything. So that's a belief. That's like something you can't really see, something you can't really measure, but something you can talk about. And then it trickles down into all the things that I listed down there, into the physical world. And what a lot of companies do, what I see them doing, is changing the physical world. So changing buildings, changing parking lots, changing car parks, perhaps changing policies and processes. But more often than not, they don't move up higher into terms of talking about norms, values, convictions, and underlying beliefs, which is exactly what you need to do if you want to change the culture. So you need to have really proper, deep, transformational conversations with each other, which sound big, but are also small in having them, to change the culture. And this in itself is already like, wow. So we need to talk about culture instead of changing the building. Yeah, that's right. That's really right. So culture, you could say, culture is a collection of solidified beliefs and the behavioral norms that follow from it. And they get shape in interaction and decision making. So maybe I think these are the two most important drivers of culture. So in interaction, we give meaning. We talk about how we see the world, how we experience the world, how we behave in the world, and we talk about these things. And if there's enough people believing the same set of ideas, we have something we call culture. And then there is the decision-making process. So who has the power to define the normal? Who has the power to define who's an insider of the group and who's an outsider? Who has the power to punish or to reward? So leaders and decision-making processes are super important drivers of culture, I think. And that brings me to three ideas, three thoughts I want to share with you, because I think as anthropologists and as anthropological discipline, we need to improve our game, at least in three ways. And those three ideas I want to present to you. And when you just logged into this meeting at a later moment, I will share my slides afterwards, so don't worry about it. But I think if you look at leaders, we often are very judgmental, and I see a lot of poor leadership, but I also see a lot of good leaders who are making poor decisions, or good people who are trying to be good leaders making poor decisions. So I think leadership is about, it will always be there. It's a given. So you can say power is a bad thing, but it's always going to be there. Actually, I think it's one of the most researched themes that we do as anthropologists. So leadership is not a bad thing. It will always be there. So power is a given, and ranking is everywhere. So who gets to call the shots? Who decides what's normal? Who defines the group? Who defines who's outside the group? Those things will always be there. Those things, those dynamics make us human. So I think as anthropologists, we study them, but perhaps we should be a little bit less judgmental about them. I think the questions that I found throughout the past, well, let's say 10, 11 years, I want to give to you as kind of well, homework sounds too stern, but kind of to start your own reflection, and perhaps you have a question or an idea afterwards for the Q&A. But I believe that we must engage with leaders to help them become better leaders. So we need to build rapport with them, with the people in power, and we need to have empathy with them as well. So have compassion with the leaders and the powerful. And of course, like I said, there's a lot of shitty leaders and a lot of shitty leadership. But at the same time, the companies and the clients I work with, they are often not bad people. They're good people having no idea what it means to be a leader, having no idea what it means to build an inclusive culture. So that raises a couple of questions. So do we speak the language of power? Do we feel comfortable with the field of power? Do we feel comfortable sitting at the tables where the decisions are being made? So I think as anthropologists and as a discipline, we need to own our rank. We need to dare to take a stand, to be bold and brave, and also to be wrong, which is kind of paradoxical perhaps. But if we dare to be wrong more often, then we can be right more often. Because one of the things that I love about anthropology, but that I think is very, very difficult as well at the same time, is our love for nuance. So we are super nuanced. You can look at something from 12, 50, 100 different angles, and they're all true and they're all valid in themselves. But if we talk like that with our clients and with customers and with people in organizations who need to make decisions, we lose them after perspective 3. So I think we need to get rid of well, not get rid of the nuance, but play a game with it a bit more. So be bold and brave, dare to take a stand, dare to be wrong, to be right more often. I think that's something that we really need to do. And I'm struggling with myself at the same time. So I don't have the holy grail of anthropology. I don't think I'm not that bold and brave. I'm a bit more humble than that. But I think that's something we should dare more often. So do we speak the language of leadership? Do we feel compassion with them, even when they're making really poor decisions and building toxic environments, for example? Well, something else. I think it's really funny. The thought struck me a couple of years ago, because what I read was an article, a blog piece on the internet, and it said, well, the movement of sustainability, the field of sustainability, needs better marketeers. And I thought, wow, we shouldn't flatten the move into sustainability with a marketing story. But I started thinking about it. I started thinking about what marketing is, and it's about stories about a brand, about a product, about a service, about a discipline that invite other people to step into it, that almost seduce people into that story. And I thought that's funny, because when I walk in an organization and I do a culture assessment or a culture scan, I am hungry for stories. I'm looking for stories everywhere. So I have my ears out for story all the time, almost day and night, you could say. And I thought, wow, anthropologists, they use story to understand a given culture. We use story to guide change. We often engage in building stories, co-writing, co-building stories with the field that we are working in order to kind of create a change or create a new story. And I thought, how come are we so poor at writing our own story about what anthropology is and what it can bring and what it does and the value that it holds? So I think as anthropologists, we study stories all the time, but we're not really good at telling our own story. So I think we should up our game in terms of telling our own story. So this raised a couple of questions. In order to have more impact, we should do better storytelling, because stories are all about sense making. Stories are sense making processes. Stories order the world in terms of how we look at it. So we ask for numbers, but we remember the stories. I like that quote. It's from Jeff Lineweaver. He wrote a book on storytelling. But I like that quote. We ask for data, but we believe in stories. And I think this is true. So I think as anthropologists, to have more impact and to create jobs to have that impact, we should up our marketing and our storytelling game. So I wrote a couple of reflections and a couple of questions to digest, perhaps during this hour or later through a Q&A, or perhaps later on. I'm totally fine with that. But I think we think that people shape stories, but in fact, stories shape people. And people, we are sense-making organisms. So let's help everyone else to make sense of anthropology by telling better stories. Let's tell great stories about who we are, what we're capable of, and what problems that we solve. Because if we don't tell better stories, other people will tell them for us. If we don't, we confuse. If we confuse, we lose. So this is also, this goes back to the nuance I just talked about. If we over nuance our own story, people get lost. They don't follow. It might be true, but they are disconnected already long before we get to where we want to be. So I think we need to tell better stories about who we are, about what we can do, about what value we add. So that's part of the reason, that's the main part of the reason why we wrote this book together with Masha Cohen and Laurens Bakker. At that time we started writing, we couldn't articulate these lines perfectly well like I can now, but this feeling we have, we need to tell better stories, because if we don't, others will tell them for us, and we don't get to define the framing of what anthropology is and can bring to you. So I think we need to do better marketing, basically. And I'm not a marketing expert, although I know a thing or two about storytelling. But I think we should really do a better job telling better stories, have them visually nice, in whatever form you do it. But we need to do better marketing. Which kind of brings me to the third thing, third idea, third concept. And I think we need to professionalize our discipline and need to professionalize our own game, because if we don't take ourselves seriously, no one else will. So this asks from us that we, after we graduate, I went through the same process as well. I think I was a very good academic anthropologist, but I didn't really know how organizations worked. I didn't know how to apply my skills and my knowledge and my expertise in the field of organizations and corporations and companies and outside of academia, basically. So I had to learn those things, but I think we need to learn those things collectively, because only then we can get to apply the full breadth and the full width and the full depth of what we can do, of what anthropology is. Like understanding why people do what they do, believe what they believe, how people make sense, how we make sense ourselves. And I think we really need to professionalize our discipline and our modus operandi, our ways of working. So just a couple of thoughts about it to reflect on, perhaps. I think there's major challenges we are facing as global society right now. One of my first slides, I listed 5. There's more. Probably in India they're a little different, and in different places in the world they're also different. But I think we are facing major challenges in the world. So let's move beyond as a discipline. Let's move beyond researching and only describing and then saying, well, this is it. But let's engage in bringing change. Let's engage in making an impact, because I think that's what the world needs. That's what the world demands, perhaps, of everyone. I think to face climate change, to build sustainable and inclusive societies, I think we really need to pick up that responsibility to engage in bringing change, which is a difficult thing I've been struggling with myself, because anthropology is about describing and basically about not judging, and changing is judging in a way, because you say it's not good as it is, it's not right as it is, I'm going to change it. So there's a judgment that's in change itself. But I think it comes down to your own ethical, moral compass to engage in that change and to start building that world that is, for me, more inclusive and more sustainable, basically more just, more equal. So what we need to do is, let's say that we're anthropologists, and say it out loud and say it out proud always, because if we are not, no one else will know what we can do, and no one else will take us seriously. So let's be proud of those in our own discipline that stick out their necks and that pave the way for other people. So there's a couple of people in Holland who are doing these things, and they get chopped down at their ankles every now and then by people who are inside academia because it's not anthropological enough, or they're selling their souls to capitalism. And there's a little bit truth to this criticism, but it's too easy to criticize. I think we need to step into the game and try to make an impact and be proud of those who are trying to do so. Stumbling sometimes, falling sometimes, making mistakes, yes, doing all those things, but from the perspective of trying to improve society, trying to make a positive impact in the world. So let's be bold and brave, and let's make that impact. And I think anthropologists are really suited to do these things, and we are really well positioned to help find new answers, or at least ask new questions about those major challenges that we're facing as societies today. So this is my reflection, but maybe perhaps even a little bit of a pamphlet or a manifesto. It's ideas, it's thoughts. I allow you to totally disagree with that. I'm up for discussion, but these are my ideas, and I think if we do our marketing better, if we engage with leaders and with those in power more, feel more compassion with them, if we tell better stories about ourselves, and if we take ourselves a bit more serious, a lot more serious, and professionalize our discipline and our skills and the ways that we sell those things, and that we act in the world of companies and organizations, then there's a world to win. And there is a world to win. We need to win the world, because we're not going in the right direction currently in many terms, in many fields. So there is a world to win, almost literally. So anthropology rocks. I really think so. I really believe that deep in my heart. And you're here as well. Most anthropologists I speak with, they say, well, I love my discipline, I love my field. But I also think that if we confuse, we lose. So we have to tell better stories. We have to up our marketing game. We have to be more professional, because if we don't, we lose, and there's a world to win. We need to win it. So thank you for listening. I hope you have a lot of questions. You have a lot of reflections. And I will just stop talking now and give the word back to Dr. Pedrataya and to you, and stop sharing my screen, because I'll send the slides afterwards. If you like to keep in touch, we have a newsletter. It's in Dutch, but perhaps it ups your Dutch game. And if you want some more reading, then here are some tips. Some are Dutch, most are English. Thank you for listening and looking, and hopefully it gives you something you can work with, and gives you some inspiration and hope. So Dr. Pedrataya.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your profound thoughts and inspiring lecture. And it is a very convincing and challenging. And you also shared ideas which are struggle, what anthropologists really struggle, and where they move. You have also pointed to the needed direction. And you brought very powerful insights, and to make anthropology relevant in the marketplace, in the context of climate change and many pressing issues and the global challenges, and all those things you brought into into our notice. And yes, the Anthropological Association for Humankind as an organization, its motto is a vision is simple: to reach every individual on this planet with the benefits of anthropology to improve their condition. So with that, we have started this organization with the senior anthropologists from India, and trying to connect with the anthropologists who are like-minded, who want to make positive change in this world. So in that connection, thank you for your very wonderful lecture and important insights that you have shared. Now, I request our members who participate in this group to pose your questions one after one. Yeah, this is the time for question hour.
Respected sir, Shankaran here, sir.
Yes, please go ahead, Shankar, with your question.
Yes. Walter, sir, first of all, honestly, I would like to ask an apology for not being from the beginning of the lecture because I was packing something actually. But I really like the way how we spoke about that how we as human beings are sensory individuals and we need to understand how we need to sense the stories to speak about marketing ourselves as cultural individuals or cultural beings actually. Sir, but I would also like to mention the point about that in some areas of speaking about anthropology being professional or being categorized under capitalistic shoes, there is something called the inclusive pursuing of particular topics. I would say there is a certain ideas can be pursued only in certain zones or certain capitalistic shoes actually, but still through the capitalistic shoes we can try to serve the people outside the capitalistic space actually who are in the working class society. How do we think that we anthropologists can really extend our support from within the system of capitalism, but also reach out to the people who are to the people who need us beyond the capitalism zone actually, beyond the zone of capitalism, in order to represent and also to bring in dignity for change actually, dignity for what can change.
Well, that's an interesting question. I will just start talking and try to find an answer while doing that. Well, first of all, I would be curious to what you consider to be this capitalist zone and the zone beyond capitalism. But I think
I would like to say it is a cultural disability. Me, Shankaran, definitely has got a cultural disability of not able to sometimes go beyond the capitalistic zone. Sometimes I have to stay back in the capitalistic zone because urban culture is what I am used to. I'm not used to a rural space. I'm not used to a tribal space. So I'm used to the urban space. So therefore, you can say that my ethnocentrism has its own cowardice, and my ethnocentrism has its own cultural lag and also cultural disability to really pursue. But still, the intent of extending or connecting through the digital spaces or going through fieldwork by collaboration with other people. For example, there are some topics which have to be interpreted, unfortunately, because the media has brainwashed it from urban to rural. They have connected it in the form that it is from urban to rural. The resources are flowing from the haves to the have-nots. Even though the have-nots are serving to the haves, the haves to the have-nots the resources are flowing always. So we have to be in the place of any one part, and where we are used to is where we can start the beginning. That's what I'm talking about actually.
Yeah, I think I understand what you mean, and I think as an anthropologist, you always bring yourself. So I always bring myself and my own convictions and beliefs. So I think in order to move beyond the zone that you're comfortable with and the zone that accepts you, you have to do some deep reflections. And also accept that there will be some fields and some zones and some companies or environments that you just won't get access to, because I bring myself as a human being, which is wonderful, because then I can relate to different people from the person that I am, and relate to someone else as the person who he or she is in the field that she lives in. But some fields will remain closed for me, simple. And then there's sometimes you can find ways around that, working with other people, learning a new language, like doing our anthropological magic, like we did in the early years, going beyond the worlds that we knew and trying to understand how people lived, how they lived. And I think it's the essence of doing that is leaving behind your own moral judgment of basically of anything. So it's not about the sense-making system that you bring. It's about understanding the sense-making system of the people you are studying, of the people you are trying to understand, of the people you are trying to work with. And at the same time, you are just a person who has his own deep moral beliefs and convictions at the same time. So this is the challenging and balancing act you need to do at the same time, I believe. I hope this answers your question.
Yes, sir. I have a second question, which is the second side of the coin, actually, which has to be now spoken out, because after you spoke, I got this insight, sir. So one thing which I feel that when we speak about field work, we have to agree with the point that experience is education. Because as anthropologists, we go down to the field, we meet the people, we actually crown them for giving us the information which we need, and we write down our ethnographic account. And when we are describing our field work as an ethic, as an analyst, as a field work analyst, we are describing our reconceptualization, or we are describing our deduction. And I guess telling a story or weaving a story is a very huge word, sir. I feel it is a tentative account of storytelling. That's the best way to tell the line of storytelling. Because in that time, during an example, we quote the idea of a case study, and during the time we quote the idea of what we say, the misfortunate exotic example of a case study of a poor farmer, or exotic example of a highly suffering human being, out of which we speak about the culture of poverty, we speak about the culture of many misfortunes, which is important to be mentioned. It is important to be mentioned to analyze and to arrive at a terminology. Okay, so but do we really revisit the same field person? Again, do we get back to that person? When we state the example 10 years later, the story comes back alive, the story character comes back alive. But is the character even alive? For example, in India, the farmer who is alive at that time, he might have been dead by today by committing suicide because of the government's policy. So saying it as a storytelling is a very huge drawback, I guess. It's a demerit and a drawback. It can say it's a tentative account of storytelling. It can be an example, but it can never be a huge thing. And quoting one of the important classic about education, that is Deschooling Society by Ivan Illich, 1974, I feel that the designing of occupations for people with experience rather than qualification is something that most of the places we go back, and most capitalistic societies are not capable of designing that opportunity and that occupation for the people who are serving and who are experiencing and who are working. That is the real criticism which the working class is criticizing in the capitalistic space.
Your audio turned off.
Helping them out.
Okay.
Because that bridge or mud path is not drawn. That bridge or mud path is not given to us. That we are not able to put the bridge or mud path. That's why we are comfortable in our zone and they are comfortable in their zone. It's like the wall built in the Harappa Valley civilization or the Seven Mandarin story or anything about to say.
Yeah. Well, I don't know India as well as you do, of course, but I think I agree with most of the things that you said. And the point I try to make is that changing a political system I think is needed, but is quite hard at the same time. And I think what we can do at least is use storytelling and marketing to tell better stories about as anthropologists what we can do and what we have to offer and what value we add. So I think we need to use storytelling and to use marketing to create a place for ourselves at the tables that are relevant in order to make decisions. That's a big word, but I think that's one of the things one of the points I try to make. And the other point is that I think we are trained, at least in Holland, anthropologists are trained to do ethnographic field work and a bit more, but that's the core of anthropology. But what I also believe is that we need to move beyond doing research and doing field work into engaging with that field and into trying to create change in whatever way. And of course, this depends on the field and the context that you're in. But I think we should take the bold and brave step beyond describing into engaging. And I think that is something that at least I didn't learn at university. That's not what universities in Holland are teaching. But I think this is really important to keep anthropology relevant and to make an impact that I think is needed in the world, because there's many ways that we're not going in the right directions. And of course, there's super huge challenges, and I think they're perhaps bigger in India than they're in Holland, in terms of fields that you can't enter, or walls between fields, or inequalities or poverties, and stories that repeat themselves and not really changing anything. So that's also true. Yeah.
Sir, Walter, sir, I just want to respond to Shankaran's question. Add some few ideas.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Irrespective of a capitalistic orientation or a socialistic orientation or the communistic orientation, whatever the ideology, the human potential and change and the time and the tongue, how the potential is managed to unpack, unleash, or harness, to acquire the required competencies, to overcome the obstacles, whether it is social or cultural, whatever, economical. So how humans across the world they utilize the time and manage their tongue and relationships and unpack their potential and manage the change and to improve their condition. How anthropologists can enter into the picture, because they study the big picture of humankind, and with their valuable insights facilitate, irrespective of the ideological background or orientation. Every human is struggling how to manage the change, how to manage the time, how to organize himself, how to create wealth, how to meet the needs, their different whole set of needs, how humans cater their needs, their social organization, economic organization, cultural organization, political organization. How do humans organize themselves to solve their problems? That's where we anthropologists who study people holistically and empirically come up with the insights. And this anthropological knowledge, irrespective of the societies and their struggles, their problems, and we study the principles of human organization. How do people organize themselves? And the principles of human acquisition and principles of human management. And how do they create culture? How do they create society and the things they wanted actually, they aspiring for or expecting. So in those are the areas. So we anthropologists need to enter and facilitate the success stories, the stories that are told. Once upon a time, it was a struggle for them, and after some time, they figured it out, and they found the solution. That success story, how they improved their condition amidst of plurality and complexity and struggle and poverty and many other indicators that hinder human progress. The right to life, the right to education, the right to health, the right to the freedom and liberty, all those things, how those things are negotiated, realized and achieved and accomplished, enjoyed, experienced. Those success stories across the world, we need to knit together, connect together, to tell stories, to make a positive change. That's what I think Walter sir is trying to say, and I think Shankaran got it. So that's where our urgency for anthropology, anthropologists are wanted, needed, desperately needed, because they understand the psychology, the habits of thought, the habits of their every aspect of their life, and the habits of their heart, means dreams, desires, visions, passions, and all those things. How the habits of human heart and human mind and human relations are organized, and what are the troubling areas, and what are the gaps and how they are complicated. So how to bridge the relations and make connections to improve the human condition. That's where really governments are trying. Governments are huge challenges before on their table to solve. So, and they have a limited time. So people have given them. So the opportunity is there to make decisions, and also opportunity is there to impact the society positively. But if the leadership is not given proper inputs, the grassroots and the human conditions, and how to go about it, how to navigate the positive change, that's what exactly politicians and the policymakers and the executives and the judiciary, they're all looking for the effective implementation of the justice and effective realization of the justice, and how human rights are really realized, negotiated, and implemented and experienced in their day-to-day relations. All these things, they need meanings, they need stories to understand and grasp the full-fledged the depth and width of the concepts. And so in providing the meanings and providing the stories and providing the examples and success stories, I think that's where we need to come up with insights, not only insights, and turning knowledge into wisdom, solving human problems. That's where knowledge is applied. So, and solutions are facilitated. It's a process, but into that process, we need to come and take our seat, claim our position at the table. That's what I think Walter sir is trying to. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Please.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
See, Sunita has her hand raised.
Yeah, thank you so much, Walter. It was really interesting to listen to you, and just wanted to add on one or two comments when it comes to the Indian situation. My research on medical tourism, I've been researching for the past decade about patients coming to India and looking at healthcare as a corporate healthcare. So when you look at corporatization of healthcare, we can be critical about it. Like from public health perspective, I'm a bit critical about the private and the corporate healthcare. At the same time, this can be seen as anthropologists understanding hospitals from public health perspective, which is critical. But at the same time, as an anthropologist, you can very well contribute in the progress of the corporate hospitals by understanding the cultures of various patients coming to the hospitals and trying to help them out to tweak their everyday requirements as per the cultures of the patients. Now, these are some of the areas which in Indian anthropology courses, they have not been taught, like business anthropology. Suppose we want to understand anthropology of business, anthropology of entrepreneurship. There are many courses which we haven't really started teaching in the university, and we still have a lot to do with traditional anthropology, which most of us are doing. And since anthropology is not taught in all the universities and colleges, despite this subject being so dynamic and vibrant and applied, and you see in UK, USA, anthropologists have done lots of work in public health, in gender studies, and any area, environment or disasters, any area which you take, anthropologists have been contributing immensely. But unfortunately, that's not happening in India, and that's where, like our foundation or Dr. Pedrataya, who started this, and UIAF, a lot of associations are trying to make anthropology more visible. So, what would be your suggestion related to making anthropology visible? Because corporate anthropology, I see abroad, a lot of anthropologists are like brand anthropologists or design anthropologists, taking a specific area and working on it and really making it applied. That's one question. The other is, of course, in Indian context, if you want to understand the policy, many bureaucrats do not really like stories. They say these are stories, and they say these are one or two cases. where are the numbers, and they want to have big numbers to then base their policy on the quantitative analysis, which many of us don't do. So of course now we understand that definitely like qualitative research, quantitative research, or mixed methods are some things which a lot of us are trying to do. So, how do we make anthropology visible? What are the courses which should be taught, or how do we popularize this subject? I think this is something which we all want to know, so that we take it forward. Yeah, thank you so much for what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for your questions and your remarks, and I think they're spot on. So I really recognize what you're saying, and I think I'm lucky to live in Holland, where engaged, applied, organizational, corporate anthropology well is vibrant and living, and perhaps a little bit ahead of other places in the world. But what I saw, we came from a position where anthropology was not taken seriously, regarded as something not relevant to policy making or decision making process or whatever, because we were studying far away exotic people, which was considered to be irrelevant. But what changed it was that there were more and more anthropologists working inside organizations and companies, delivering valuable insights to those companies, and not only delivering those insights, but also talking about those things. And more and more people started seeing that, wow, this anthropology is something that's unique, because no other discipline can bring what anthropologists bring. And in Holland, a lot of I always meet a discussion like, why do you believe in qualitative research, and why shouldn't we do just what's the word in English? Why not send out a questionnaire, and then everybody fills out a couple of lines, and then we have statistics in the end.
Right.
And the job is up to us to use the right metaphors, to speak the right language, to use the proper examples, sometimes even using images to tell the story about why it matters to do qualitative research. Because people, I often say, well, have you ever filled out a questionnaire? Yeah. And how do you do that? Well, quite quick and dirty, and there's always things you can't really put in there, and things that are a little bit side. But so reality is something different from a filled out questionnaire, and that's the main argument for, or one of the main arguments you could say, for qualitative anthropological ethnographic research and fieldwork, I believe. So what we need to do to make it more visible is engage. Well, actually, those are, I think, the three main points that I came up with throughout my lecture is engaging more with leaders and leadership, and sitting at the tables where the decisions are being made. So this asks us to engage more with leaders, but also to have more compassion for them, even though that can be quite challenging or hard, or even conflicting with who you are and what you believe in. And to tell better stories about what we are doing, what we're capable of, and not write academic papers, but perhaps 1 or 2 page documents which are nicely to read and nicely to swallow, so to say. So you invite people into the story, into the frame of anthropology that you try to shape. And in Holland, actually, this is what happened in Holland. People started telling stories, writing great books about anthropology that came out of only the small discipline of anthropologists, but into the wider field of people working in organizations and companies. And what helps is translate those basic anthropological lessons into language, into examples, into stories again, that other people outside understand. So it's kind of simplifying the lessons that are to be learned from anthropology. That would be the answer to your first question about how to make anthropology more visible. And this is not like the silver bullet solution. It's a process that takes years, but I think those are a couple of ingredients that help. And the other thing is, policymakers like big numbers. I recognize that. I can imagine that in India, this is an even stronger trend. In companies that I do culture assessment or culture research, they always ask those questions, and the first thing they get back to me with is, well, these are just incidents, so what's the numbers? And I think the challenge is to move from other people showing incidents into other people, clients, employees, showing the patterns. So connecting the incidents into a pattern.
Right.
And then you start having a different conversation. And then the numbers turn out often to be not relevant, because an employee satisfaction score of 73%, what does it mean? I really clearly have no idea. Really, I don't. So what's underneath? What's the meaning of those numbers? And what's the pattern that connect the incidents? And I think that's the conversation where you need to be. But in order to establish a firm pattern, of course, you can always deny it. But in order to establish this firm pattern, you have to find enough incidents and connect them convincingly, in my experience. And one of the best ways to do this is with stories.
Right. Absolutely, you're right. And I think that's what we are trying to do. Let's hope for the best, and I'll be in touch with you.
I'm looking forward to it. And I think this is, I mean, I feel privileged that we are at this place where we are in Holland right now. And of course, this was not easy, still hardworking. But I realized that there's other places in the world, and like you sketched, that it's harder work and you're not taking seriously enough as you would like. So I know this can be frustrating, confronting, desperate at the same time. And not to say that you just said that, but I really believe that we need more of us and more of our anthropological perspectives in the world to solve the problems that we're facing. I really strongly believe that. So yeah, keep going.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Walter.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Sir, you were telling about the Holland experience, how once upon a time, how the situation of anthropology was, and now what is the condition of anthropology and how it is making progress and entering into the corporate world and making the positive change. So would you please elaborate on that front?
Yes, I will. Well, I think applied anthropology, organizational corporate anthropology is like 15 years ago, it was almost non-existing. 10 years ago there was something, and 5 years ago it kind of splashed. And the development was that a lot of people, if you started studying anthropology, people said, well, you're studying to be unemployed. That was the joke, but there was truth to the joke, even in Holland. And I think partly this was because anthropologists, after graduating, found their place in the labor market, but kind of forgot or didn't say that they were anthropologists. So their ways of looking, their holistic perspective, perhaps doing the research in the way that we do, it was kind of made smaller than it should be. And at one point there was like this kind of emancipation perhaps of anthropologists, and people saying, well, I am an anthropologist and this comes from anthropology, and this is not rocket science, this is like how we do these things, and there's a solid scientific approach, process, research skills underneath. And then it got other people thinking, and of course it started small by a journalist in Holland who wrote a couple of books, who reached an immense audience about well, he had been in a couple of places. His name is Joris Leijendijk. Some of his books are translated, but at one point he did research in the Hague in Holland, which is our governing where our government resides, and he kind of wrote an ethnography about it, and it was so recognizable and confronting at the same time. So it was like one of the bestsellers at that time. It's, I don't know, it's 8-10 years ago, something like that. And at once, and he said out loud, I'm an anthropologist, and this is like this is basic anthropology. So you saw more of these things happening. And then 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there were two ladies who are both anthropologists working in the field of organizations and companies, and they wrote a book which they called The Corporate Tribe. And within anthropology, they got a lot of pushback because even using the word tribe was already like, wow, can you do that? And you shouldn't. And there was a lot of fuss about that. But what they did, I got it right here in front of me, and this was a game changer. This like the picture also was also like, wow, can you do this? And there was a lot of fuss about it. But this book gave language and ideas and images to people working outside of anthropology, but inside of organizations and companies that were mind-blowing, like how to understand culture, how to do research, where do you look at, how can you design culture change, all those kind of things. They wrote in this book in language that was understood by people outside of the academic anthropology realm, you could say. And this book turned out to be Management Book of the Year in Holland, and the rest is history, you could say. But in essence, it's about stories that are compelling, that are inviting, that are almost seducing other people to step into, because wow, this is cool, this is interesting, I can apply this in my organization. Wow, now I better understand why my people behave like they behave, and I have some ideas how to change that or how to address that. So it's those things about telling better stories for bigger audiences in order for other people to make it understand. So what I did often was whine in a corner and well, they don't understand me. And I thought, well, let's turn that around. What do I need to do to make them understand me better? And this is about, if I go to Greenland and I speak Dutch, they don't understand me. It's very simple. So I have to learn that other language. If I go to Greenland in my nice suit and I go on a fishing boat, they think I'm crazy, and I am, because it's really cold and windy and everything, and I'm not suited for that environment. So you have to adjust to the environment that you want to work with, that you want to engage with, that you want to be understood by. So we need to learn the language, we need to learn how to dress, we need to learn the culture code of that environment where we want to work. So and tell good stories about it. So I think those are three main developments in Holland. And now and we try to do something to put our chip in it as well with the book that we wrote, which is called Anthropologists Wanted, to tell good stories, to help anthropologists articulate their own skills and value better to other people, to their parents or to their employers or to their friends or to whoever wants to listen. So yeah.
So what is the present condition in Holland about anthropology and the graduates and who graduate from the universities? So
well, truth be told, I'm not deep in the academic system anymore. So I used to be tutor for a program where I graduated myself, but that's already 3-4 years ago. But the situation is that there's like 5 universities teaching anthropology with their specific angles and places in the world that they have expertise on. But I would say every year there's like somewhere between 100 and 200 people graduating from a master's program. Maybe a little more actually. So there's a lot of bachelor students. The university where I started, there were about 100 bachelor students every year. And then there's, I think, about 10% of those people who graduate stay in academics by doing a PhD, but that means 90% of the people get spit out by the system every year and needs to find a place on the labor market. So, and the funny thing is that the academic community is a community. So there's like this connection, and anthropologists outside of academia, they find their own path, but they're not as strongly connected. And you see there's more connections are being built right now in order to strengthen the body of knowledge, the methods, ways to do research in digital times due to Corona or for other reasons. So you see the ties between non-academic anthropologists getting a little bit tighter, and I think this is a good thing, because then together you can learn from each other. And again, I'm getting back to the point I just made before. You can do you can design and tell and spread the stories much better if you kind of do it collectively. And still, there's a lot of anthropologists who are anthropologists without really mentioning it, or without it's not like every anthropologist is being received by the labor market open-armed. I mean, there's still, you can study every field you can because it's about humans, which is wonderful, but this also means you have to carve your own path as an anthropologist. So it's not laid out in front of you. And this is, I think this is partly hardworking, partly having a little bit of luck, and partly momentum that's shifting towards anthropology. Yeah, but I think in Holland and in the UK, as mentioned before, and in the US, of course, as well, but also in the Nordics, in Denmark and Norway, Sweden, a lot of great anthropological work is being done within companies and organizations. Yeah, in an applied way. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I request our participants, if you have any questions, please post to our guest speaker.
I see some people have to leave already as well.
Yeah.
I want to ask under one question, actually. Yes, sir. So how do we, in terms of marketing, or in terms of media playing an important role, how do we understand the way an information is being or a narrative is being really put across to the community in terms of dignity and in terms of understanding? For example, controversial books do come out sometimes. Historical books or controversial academic books, sometimes they tend to come out and they tend to bring anger across certain dominant communities over the minority communities. How do we look at the idea of media marketing or banning a book in terms of looking at the idea, this thing actually? Because in India it had happened actually. Recently there was a controversy of that sort actually.
Shankaran,
Yes.
we need the application oriented questions. The thing is, general questions, this is not the time, but anyway, you will have a personal access to the speaker also, so you can ask. But in this the platform, International Institute of Anthropological Applications.
Yes,
so
sir.
we learned guest speaker we have, so we want to learn from him. So the exact the thing, how do applications are forwarded, and what are the, for example, being a graduate from anthropology, you are working with the companies as a consultant, as a kind of thing. So what are the experiences that you want to share, kind of thing?
Well, like I said, the path is not just laid out, but I think well, I'm also thinking about the question Sankaran was asking, and I think there's a long answer to that which I'm not going to give now because it's more of a dialogue. But I think the short answer is that when I do a culture scan within an organization, and I come back with a very critical report, it's really easy for that organization, and especially the leaders within it, to dismiss the report entirely, and my way of working as well, and my person as well. So I think the challenge for someone to receive the message is to leave out your moral judgments and just to help someone look in the mirror. So if I do something like this, I kind of hold up a mirror and ask them, are you satisfied with what you're seeing? And if it's a truly honest but not judgmental picture you're looking at, you almost never can say, well, I'm totally happy with it. Perhaps for some people in the system, but not for everyone in the system. So I think leaving out your own moral judgments, even if they are the fire while you engage in that field, they help me to work in fields like that. And I don't say this is like the way to do it for everyone, but this is the short answer I can give to your question. In order to answer your question, Pedro Taya, I think what I would recommend young anthropologists to do is find fields where they're kind of doing the type of work anthropologists are doing. Only now, I think the past, let's say 2-3 years, every now and then there's like a vacancy or a job like I'm looking for an anthropologist. But this wasn't like that for many years, and still many organizations are looking for skills that anthropologists are really good at, but the organizations don't realize that they are looking for an anthropologist. So you have to look for organizations in the field of consulting, in the field of doing research, in the field of the theme that you believe is important to do, in my case sustainability, and find ways, find your voice in terms of how does anthropology relate to this field in terms of skills, in terms of knowledge, in terms of approaches. And you have to kind of develop a vision, which is a big word for perhaps just an idea about what you can add to the research in a factory, for example. But you have, does it make sense what I'm trying to say, Pedro Taya, or are you lost?
It makes sense. Actually, those are the initial steps that we need to look for to take. And you are already working with a number of companies and as a consultant, as a corporate anthropologist.
Yeah.
So, and that is a big success story. Actually, your story is a big success story
in itself. Well, and the funny thing is, I just started one day, and I ride my bike to the Chamber of Commerce to enlist my company in the register, and then I had a company, and I was like, oh my god, now what? I didn't have a client, I didn't have a website, I didn't have a logo. The only thing, I had a name and some vague idea about that I wanted to do something in this field of climate change and anthropology and sustainability. And I just started doing field work. I started talking with people. I started finding organizations and companies and ask whether there was something I could do for them. What really helped me was writing, because writing is thinking, and it helped me to reflect on this field, to reflect on my position as an anthropologist towards this field. And I started just talking with hundreds of people, trying to find assignments and trying to find clients, and well, it worked, because I am where I am right now, because I took those small baby steps in the beginning. And I mean, it was hard work without knowing that there would be success. But still, I had this fire inside myself burning, basically two fires: the love for anthropology and the belief that it really has something to bring to the world, and well, the love for the planet or for society, and my seeing in Greenland that we're going down the wrong road. So those two fires kept me going, even on Sunday mornings when my friends were doing well, things that friends do, and I was building my website or writing a blog article or designing a proposal for a client, stuff like that. So it was hard work. It wasn't the easy way, but actually it's doing field work, meeting people, understanding their challenges, understanding ways that you could add something to that or solve those challenges or ask the right questions, reading, writing, just taking it small baby step by small baby step, and then navigating a pathway forward without really knowing what the next step would be or will be. I mean, I still, entrepreneuring is really great if it works. It's shitty if it doesn't. I've had my dark times as well. But it's also having the trust and the faith in yourself that you will find the next step, even if you don't see it right now. Something like that.
It's
Yeah.
very, very good. There is fire in that quote.
Yeah, there is. And also like believe in yourself as an anthropologist, because we have many skills that are quite easily neglected or ignored by a lot of people in professional occupations, but you are really capable of something. You really have a set of unique anthropological skills that are really valuable. The only thing you need to do is to translate them in ways that the other one, your client or your employer or whatever, understands how you bring that value. So you have to find that problem the other party has. And I see right now a question is coming in, whether
Yes.
I'm collaborating with companies for climate change. While collaborating, yes and no. I am collaborating with all my clients because I can't bring change just by myself. I need to do it with them. And depending on the client, I'm working with them. But what I also think is, what I believe this question also means is, am I collaborating with other firms? Ah, Promila, come in.
I'm sorry, my
Oh,
daughter
that's
is
all
in the
right.
class. Yeah,
That's all right.
I was unmuted. I just apologize for that. But yeah,
No,
my
don't worry.
question was been answered. I was thinking that you kind of maybe you I was just curious to know, because you are working, your company is about the green and the climate change. So I was curious to know that, are you collaborating with companies, or how do you kind of function? What is the basic guideline kind of a thing? What do you do exactly? So I was just curious about you collaborate with companies, or yeah, this is why.
Well, my company is small. We are just 4 or 5 people, depending on how you measure. So we are a small company, but what we do is help other organizations and companies to understand how culture works and to understand sustainability and the move to embed sustainability in your organization. It's not about technology. It's not about new business cases. Of course, they help, but the deep basic essence of it is that it's about behavior, mindset, and collective behavior, which is culture. So in that case, it helps to understand how culture works, how the culture of the company that I work with looks like, what the patterns are, what the frictions are, where the tensions are, and then design a process to see how and where we can embed sustainability into the DNA, into the culture of their company. And depending on the company, that looks differently, because a water cleaning organization has a totally different way of operating than a multinational like DSM, for example. So they're depending on the company, we design a process, and my role often is to help them understand culture and to help them have the right conversations. If you remember, one of my early slides is that what often companies do is change the physical environment and change a little bit of processes and policies. But what you really need to do is to talk about the underlying convictions and belief sets. So you have to have really proper, brave and difficult dialogue. So I design this process, I guide these dialogues, and I do the right interventions at the right time. And sometimes I do the wrong interventions at the right time, but I mean, I'm just human as well. So I'm more of a process guide than, and of course I know a thing or two about sustainability. I know quite a lot about it, but depending on the company, they need to find different answers. And I ask the questions and I help them to find those answers. And it's not just leaders who I guide, but we collect a group of people who is very diverse from within the company to go through a process of finding those answers that really work for the entire company. Does this kind of answer your question?
Yes, it does. It does. It does. I was just wondering. I thought you do a field work. You go for field work or something, but I understood now that you work inside a corporate sector.
Yeah, and I go for field work inside companies and
Of
organizations.
course, of course, that's part of
Those
it. Yeah,
are, that's my field,
yeah.
which
Yeah,
which
that
is
would definitely
interesting.
bring some solutions to forward too.
Yeah, and of course, there's what I did on Greenland opened my eyes, but I still think I don't do that anymore, although I would love to. But I still think it's important to understand the social impact of climate change right now and in the upcoming years, because it's only getting larger and larger. So I still think there's a lot of work to be done in that area as well, although I don't do it myself anymore. Well, like I said before, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question?
I think the time is coming to start closing the session, right?
No. I want
No,
to
no,
ask.
no, no, no. Oh, that's all right.
The important question I want to ask. You mentioned during your presentation the leadership. So leadership is the most important thing for the family or for the community, for society, or either in politics, in any sector, and the people who provide leadership. And you are working with the leaders. So the leadership anthropology of leadership. So how do you really, these leaders, organizational leaders, and they give much attention to management experts and the motivational speakers or whatever. So those areas are dominated by management or motivational speakers. But how do you create your space and engage with them? And can you tell one or two stories how you are successful in engaging with the leader, and if at all, and give that case kind of example?
Yeah. Well,
Because
that's an interesting question, and I think I stumbled my way into this field myself as well. But I think again this comes down to, I mean, first of all, you need to realize leaders are people as well. So of course, leadership is kind of an institute, and there's a professional role, but the leader himself is, or herself is, a person as well. And I think one of the keys I found is to address leaders in their capacity as a person, as a human being, as a fellow human being, almost as a father or a daughter or a son or a neighbor, or so. I mean, and then you have a different kind of conversation. And not all leaders are willing to engage, or they in that way. I recently I wrote a blog post based on a conversation I had with a leader, and he said, well, culture, I don't do culture. To me, only performance and outcome and KPIs matter. And I said, well, okay, if you don't do culture, that's fine, but then culture will do you. So culture is being shaped whether or not you believe in it, because it's one of the fundamental dynamics within human groups. We build culture because this is about sense making. This is about attaching meaning to the world and our experience in it. So there will be culture no matter what. So you can say, I don't do culture, but then it will come back and bite you in the tail. So it's about finding the right, easy to grasp examples, sometimes even coming down to the 1-2 key sentences that shift his mind and bring him to different thoughts. And wow, you're right, I didn't look at it from that way. So another metaphor I like, I didn't come up with myself, but looking at a merger between companies as if it was a marriage between families. And that metaphor is very strong. So I guided a couple of merging processes, and if I put in this metaphor, and it was like, wow, I didn't look at it from that way, but yeah, you're right, we need to build a couple of rituals. We have to create a proper wedding and invite our social systems, which are our suppliers, our clients, other stakeholders, to meet each other, to have this party, to have this wild party before you get married and do all the things that you will never do again once you are married. So this metaphor is really strong in terms of people helping understand the process that they're going through. So, for example, the concept of liminality itself, it's like basic anthropology. At least in Holland, it's like something you learn the first 1 or 2 years. Liminality.
What is liminality you are talking about?
The process of liminality means is that you are change doesn't happen in 2 phases from old to new, but in 3 phases, from old through something we call the liminal phase, this being in between, betwixt and between. Victor Turner wrote about this. Being separated from your tribe, facing a challenge that is a little bit dangerous and exciting, but most of the time is going well, and then returning to your society, being ready for the task that you're given, for your new role or your new function. Actually, I recorded a couple of video clips about this in English, and I will send them through to you, so you can use them perhaps to deepen the understanding of it. But this is a very basic concept, at least in Dutch anthropology taught at academia. And I explained this to audiences, and they're like, "Wow, I never thought about it like that." But now I understand why my organization is really not doing what I want them to do, and now I also understand why my marriage failed. And it's like, on so many layers, it's about deeply understanding people, actually. And people build organizations and build church communities and build football and soccer teams and build governments and build countries and but in the end, it's all about people. It's about how we cooperate, how we work together, how we trust each other, how we go with reciprocity. All these things are basic human dynamics, and I often help people in companies and leaders in companies to look through the eyes of an anthropologist to their own dynamics within the organizations that they work or are responsible for. Yeah, it's a long answer to your question. Yeah.
You are telling that the organization culture, how do you actually help the organization leaders to discover their culture? Actually, culture is not realized. It is done naturally. It flows among relations and it affects, it hinders, sometimes it creates positive waves. And how do you really successfully make people, and how do you define culture, and how do this complicated concept of culture, and how do you make the ordinary people, or even though in their own eyes, the organization leaders, CEOs of the companies, how do you make them understand culture and its the impact on the people, and what are the hindrances that culture brings, and how to solve it, kind of thing. First of all, they need to discover the culture, and they say that they have their own organizational culture, but actually, as an anthropologist, how do you define culture, and how do you make them understand culture that you are talking to?
I think the definition that I use, because I think it's really elegant, and there's more definitions of culture, I'm aware of that, but the definition I often use is culture is shared meaning and learned behavior. And I tell stories from everyday life, about a busy swimming pool in Holland or a busy swimming pool somewhere else in the world. And I explain that those are both busy swimming pools, but the idea of what a busy swimming pool is differs from those 2 areas in the world. So with everyday examples, I make them understand that there's different ideas and different sets of meaning about the same thing you talk about. And how I help them understand their own culture is that I go into an organization, I do field work like a proper anthropologist. So I hang around at the coffee machine, at the water cooler. I'm the first one who comes in and the last one who leaves. I ask for a key of every door to walk into, to bump into people. I have a lot of small coffee conversations, some scheduled formal interviews. Like, I do everything that an anthropologist does in any field. That's what I do. And in the end, I analyze my data. I take notes. I take pictures. I record sounds, sometimes even video, and I spread out everything throughout my office, and I start puzzling. And most of the time, when it's a bigger cultural research, I do it with at least one other fieldwork professional, and sometimes even someone who is outside of the field, who is challenging us on our findings and on our own judgments, perhaps. I make this analysis, find the patterns, and then I put everything in a presentation with stories, connecting the incidents that are really recognizable for the organization that I work in. Like people, I invite everyone who's on the picture is allowed to see the picture. That's a very important thing I almost forgot to say. But everyone who's on the picture, whether it's an organization of 10 people or 1,000 people, everyone who's on the picture is allowed to see the picture. So we present our findings in a way that's really recognizable, like, wow, yeah, this is really about us. So I try to really give emic stories, emic examples, emic images of that organization, showing the patterns, but leaving out any judgment. Leave out my own sense-making system and my own moral judgment, but show this picture, which is true, which is recognizable, and also confronting a little bit. And then I ask, well, who wants to reflect on it? And there is always a couple of people who say, well, this is too strong or too confronting, or this is not about us. You missed a couple of points. But the thing is that in the conversation that starts going on after I present my picture, that's where you want to be, because in that conversation, in that dialogue, people start, the sense-making process starts. Well, you might not experience racism, but I do. Wow, I never understood. I never even thought it would be like that. But tell me, and the intervention is the dialogue, is the sense-making mechanism. And in order to get there, you have to tell the story in a presentation with images, not with a book, not with a report or anything. I don't really like writing reports, because they tend to go on in a drawer and never come out again, or just being used selectively, which is not a good thing. What I do is give a presentation that's really recognizable on terms of incident level, in a very emic way, with their language, connecting the dots, connecting the incidents into patterns, showing that there's like a limited number of patterns. Most it's somewhere between 2 and 4, most of the time it's 3 major patterns that come back again and again and again and again in many different ways. And then ask them, like, how do you feel about it? What do you recognize? What do you not recognize? What would you like to change? Is it okay as it is? And I leave away my own moral judgment and just ask them the questions and start the dialogue they need to have in order to change it, because culture is built in interaction and decision making. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. That's fascinating. Wow, very thank you for the example. And for example, I don't know the Holland situation. Is it a culturally pluralistic society, or it is a kind of homogeneous?
It depends on where you come from, but I think if you compare Holland to India, from what I know of India, Holland is quite not so pluralistic. It's quite homogeneous, with small groups of immigrant work. Well, maybe not small any now. Well, maybe we're a little bit more plural than I think, because we have immigrant workers from Morocco, from Turkey. Holland used to be a colonial power as well, so there's people from Suriname, from Indonesia living here as well. There's a refugee community, you could say. So there's a lot of struggle right now, and maybe struggle is a big word, but there's like this the topic of discrimination and racism is quite hot right now, and also the idea of culture is not a fixed thing, but is dynamic and changes over time, some people find it quite hard to grasp that idea. So our own traditions and the way we do things and the way other people need to adjust is quite strong in the minds of people. So we are also in a period of change and shift, but I think it's less urgent and less violent than what I know of the situation in India. But of course, India is large and vast, and my knowledge of your country is limited. So yeah.
The title of your book, The Anthropologists Wanted, and why organizations need anthropology. Here in India, applied anthropologists are wanted because ours is a huge society, the largest democracy, and the great pluralistic society. So diversity of faith and practices and linguistic multiplicity. So in the pluralistic context, how anthropology, once upon a time, myth and traditions, they used to regulate more, they used to regulate the traditional society. But now the policies that government makes and the judgments that Supreme Court and the High Court gives, these judgments and policies, they are shaping the culture.
Yeah.
So once upon a time, the sustainability of the culture depends on the tradition and the myth of that culture. But now the sustainability that we are aspiring or thinking is directly impacted by the judgments of the Supreme Court and the policies of the government, and also people in this pluralistic society, they have their customary laws or ritual laws, the ceremonial laws or moral laws or social laws, whatever. So they bring their cultural baggage, but the Supreme Court, it brings its the justice point of view, the culture of justice, the justice as a central thing. And the government brings the policies, great aspirations. They want to make a huge leap towards development, towards inclusion, towards more kind of the health for all, education for all, and all people's rights are valued, kind of respected, kind of. So the rights of the local culture, regional culture, the rights that the government prescribes or constitution prescribes, constitutional prescriptions, and how the constitution is interpreted by the judiciary of the country. So in this pluralistic, deciding factor is judiciary and from the governments and the constitution, how these dynamics are going on, and in the existing culturally pluralistic society. That's where anthropology has to do a crucial job. So in the how do you address the culturally pluralistic this thing, and how do you facilitate to evolve the healthy, acceptable, and kind of collective well-being, common good? So how do you think an anthropologist can really be instrumental in that process, in that direction?
I think it's an important question, and I also think that diversity is at the heart of anthropology, because it's about differences between people, which is not like a concept, but it's a given, it's a fact. We are all different. There's no single the same person of me or of you or of anyone else in this meeting in the world. So diversity is fact of life, and at the same time, how you engage with diversity, as you just sketched already, is very much about power. So who defines what's normal, and who defines who's inside the group, and what group norms you have, and how you punish or reward group members. So diversity and being a society or being a group is deeply also about power. And I think it's important to realize that diversity is at the heart of, and human differences is at the heart of anthropology. And then I also think it's important to What I believe in is that we need to allow for differences between people. I think differences are wonderful, are great, and sometimes really frustrating, but they exist, they are a given. So what we need to do is to try to achieve and work towards inclusive groups, inclusive societies, inclusive organizations, which mean that you can truly be yourself as you are, being heard, having a vote, having a seat at the table, allowed to join in and jam, so to say. But it's also about power, and it's very easy for the dominant group to play the power card and to expel or dominate minority groups. So this is a very difficult and often violent field that you are in. But I think it's, in the end, it's about having difficult and painful and emotional, but very necessary and brave dialogue between people. And I think anthropologists are perfectly suited to do that, because we are trained not to judge, even though sometimes we are confronted with ourselves. But I think an important thing to facilitate a dialogue, like I just mentioned, is the capacity and the capability and the skill to engage and to feel compassionate to everyone who is in this dialogue, to share his perspective, his story, his idea, whether it's from a place of power or whether it's from a place of feeling or being powerless or being in a majority. And I think the only way you can build culture or shape culture is in these kind of dialogues, in these interactions. So you need to create the space to have those dialogues and to hold the space to create the environment for the not knowing, for the conflict, for the emotions, for the tensions that inevitably will rise in those conversations. But they are super important not to shy away from, but to use, to go through, to have this meaningful dialogue and to build a better world together, because you are in it together, whether you're in an organization or a team or an entire society. And I think anthropologists are perfectly suited to design those conversations and to guide and facilitate those conversations and those processes at large, I think. But it's an important topic to address. I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, people think that it is a job of the police to maintain the law and order in the society.
Yeah.
And,
but laws just flow from the underlying convictions and belief sets. So if you change the law, you haven't changed the convictions. And I think that's where you need to be, at those convictions and belief sets, in order to make a profound and fundamental lasting change. And the only way to do that is not by changing laws and changing paper, but by changing and having dialogue.
Yeah, for example, anthropology. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. Here in India, there is if a woman is raped, so the punishment is the capital punishment for that.
Yeah.
So, but even though there is a law in place, and people continue. We hear in the media a lot of stories how young small babies are also raped and killed, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So how do these people's perception of the opposite sex and unless those perceptions are really tuned positively, respecting the opposite sex and respecting the individuals who are different in their beliefs and so without respecting the differences, legitimate differences, and without facilitating that differences, implementing the law to maintain the order in the society, I think the crimes will continue to happen, because people's perception of who they are and what they do, why they do, and people's needs, what are the ways to address those needs. So the systems need to be created. That's where I think to facilitate, for example, you are working in a corporate environment where performance effectiveness is always given a big seat, whereas moral excellence, nobody cares. For example, in the schools also, parents always look for the best grades. So once they successfully attain the degrees from the universities, and they become employees of a good company, they create assets. After that, there is a confusion in the family, and they commit suicides, and their lives are really abruptly closed. So even emotionally, they are not able to manage things in the small petty things also. Big huge steps they take, and they kill themselves. We hear a lot of stories. So people who are successful in studies but not successful in personal lives, in the workplace also, they had big quarrels with the fellow team workers. So something is missing in the society. So from parents aspire wealth creation, creating the assets, good jobs, good wealth. But what about the sustainability of life? How life-sustaining competencies, and parents are not caring about that. They don't have time for that. And even kids also, they deeply feel frustrated by the academic pressures. They commit suicide while they pursue the intermediate 10th schooling also, while parents are serving the food also. You fellow, you are eating nice food, nice dress we are providing, but not able to secure good marks. So they ill-treat their kids because of failing in the studies. So children, they don't find love in the parents, and they kill themselves, writing a big long letters. Many things, thousands of incidents are happening in the country I live in. So anthropology, if they do not address these suicides, the youngsters committing rapes, and the robbers emerging, crime rate is increasing. So even though there's the surveillance, the digital surveillance is there, but crimes are going on. So what exactly I'm trying to say, anthropology, how it can play an instrumental role in not only acquiring the performance excellence in studies, in the workplace, in the neighborhood, but also in the moral excellence, taking responsibility for what they say, what they do, why they do. Unless people take responsibility and feel accountability, and if that is not facilitated in academics and the socialization process and this enculturation process, and if these troubling gaps are not addressed, if this really and what is going to happen to our society, even though it has a leap, great achievements technology wide, and robotics and many artificial intelligence and all these things fields, and even in the health sector and healthcare and medicine, many areas we are making advances. But the basic thing, life sustainability, sustaining the personal life and emotional life, and all those things, how do anthropology can play a vital role?
Yeah, but I think we have a vital role to play, and well, yeah, well, there are so many challenges that we are facing, and there are so many problems that we need to solve, and I think some of them you just sketched, and I feel them in my heart, and in the end, it's about humans, and I think we are studying humans and why humans do what they do, and I think that's why anthropology has a vital role to play, like you just said. I'm going to have to leave, so I'm sorry, but we need to start ending this meeting, because I really need to go to the toilet, and there's next meetings this afternoon as well. So thank you for it, and perhaps you have like a final remark or a question or a thank you or whatever, and at least thank you for everyone for joining in and listening and asking questions and participating. I think you are muted, Pedro Ataya.
Yeah. Thank you, Walter Faaij, for your valuable time and taking time to spend with us, and also share your experiences and your country story, how anthropology made a difference and progressing and creating jobs for the graduates. Gradually, the process has begun. So that is inspiring for us, because here also 10% of anthropologists or even in academic departments are shutting down, recruitments are very less, and in the finding jobs for the anthropology graduates in the workplace, in the marketplace, that is where we need to make the difference. And also to make that difference, we need to popularize anthropology. To popularize anthropology, what are the ways? I was thinking really, because in the University of Hyderabad, where I come from, I obtained my PhD and a master's and MPhil from the university. During this pandemic time, I found sufficient time to spend in the alumni group discussions, and that's where one student asked me why anthropology is not listed in job recruiting advertisements, and why sociology and social work is mentioned, why anthropology ignored. What is the answer? Kind of thing. Then that is a convincing, very powerful answer, and that needs a right answer. That is a good question. It needs proper attention. Then my journey began. So I started thinking, asking questions, and you already mentioned asking the right questions in the right time. So this organization, Anthropological Association for Humankind, is emerged out of that simple question: why anthropology is not included in job recruiting process, and why it is ignored. And after that, many questions, I started asking questions, and finally I came up with the solution. The solution is negotiating for the telling our story as an anthropologist. What are our strengths? What are the solutions that we can bring to the society to improve the human condition and of the humankind? So that question gave me a spark, and then all this story came into existence, and we created to popularize anthropology. We need to popularize the solutions, the benefits that anthropology offers to humankind. So that is the solution I found to popularize. So then I thought of bringing spreading applications, spreading anthropological applications worldwide. And then I called for a national congress on applied anthropology in the December 2nd week. It is going to happen. Already we received 31 papers. 31 papers, excellent papers came from different corners of the country, and 3 papers from one from Sri Lanka and 2 from USA also came. What I'm thinking, to popularize anthropology, we have to prescribe the anthropological solutions to human problems, to engage with the human problems. That is where we find space. We need our presence, and we need our voice, and we need our wisdom to articulate and to solve human problems. Then everybody has problem. Every person has multiple problems, and every family has a basket full of problems, and every government is struggling, and we have huge market to work. And if we are really competent in solving human problems, to solve human problems, we need to understand human problems, cause and effect. That's where anthropology's expertise will help us to understand what are the problems and why are the problems are in place. Then from there, we have to redefine anthropology, how to solve that problems, how to evolve the most collectively acceptable and common good, collective well-being, and universal values and solutions that we need to come up with. That facilitation, anthropology has to answer that questions. So we are in that journey. In that journey, you have did your part, and we are not satisfied with your part, and we need much more inputs from you. And this journey just began, and our partnership and collaboration will continue, I hope. What do you say, Walter, sir?
I say thank you for your warm words, and thank you for spreading anthropology into the world. So I think that's what binds us and what drives us both. So thank you for having me and for this event, and let's keep doing great stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much. On behalf of the Governing Council of Anthropological Association for Humankind and on behalf of the Advisory Council and the leadership team, I congratulate you as a successful entrepreneur and the corporate anthropologist. Your story is a nice story, inspiring story, and we will take it forward. And I will have a comprehensive interview in your convenient time, so that I want to document more things about you.
That's all right.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, and stay safe. And anthropology rocks. So keep doing great stuff.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, all the participants. Your presence gave us the honor. We are honored for you to be here and to listen to the story, successful story from Holland. And we want to present more stories in the days to come, so that to encourage anthropologists to stimulate the dialogue and to facilitate the solution-oriented anthropology to improve the human condition. Thank you. Thank you all.
All right.
Thank
you.
you.
Bless you and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Convey our greetings to your family and your team at Green Culture Lab.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. With gratitude, I want to end this meeting.